We all depend on money to a certain extent, because in this life it is the means of payment, thanks to which we exchange goods and services with each other. And since money is always given to us by other people, paying for our work with it, it turns out that people make us dependent, first of all, on themselves, and only then on money. But, dependence can be considered by us as controllable and as uncontrollable, and thus, we can say in relation to people who are either more dependent on you, or you on them. For example, let's consider the situation with a person who can hardly find a job. Such people hold on to their jobs, are very afraid of their superiors, and if they have to look for a job, this is a very big problem for them. They obviously don't need work as such, they need money to live on, and to have it, they need to work. At least that's the idea they have in their heads, and their dependence on their employer is enormous, because he gives them the opportunity to earn money. In my article entitled Time and Money, I touch on the topic of time as a unit of measurement. Using it wisely, you will get closer to money, and big money, which you will not depend on if you can control yourself. But work and money are a bad combination, which, on the contrary, leads to a miserable existence and a strong dependence on money that comes through work. Maybe this doesn't sound entirely clear, but I'll explain it all to you now, because it is important to have several options for solving the money issue. That's the most important thing you should understand. You depend on money when it gets into your pocket from the hand of your boss, who is now commonly called an employer, but if you organize someone else's work yourself, then people depend on you. In this case, you will always have money, and in large quantities, but it takes time to get to this point. Just ask yourself, is it necessary to work for someone to have money? That is, try to look at the solution to money problems from the other side, the side of those who constantly buy other people for money, and thereby make even more money. It does not fall on their heads from the sky. People should depend on you now. If you can make as many people as possible depend on you, then you won't have problems with money, that's one, and you won't depend on money, in the sense that no one will buy you. Let's say you're a good specialist in something, or want to become one, which I advise you to do if you, say, don't want to organize your own business. You're a diamond, you're one in a million, and you know your worth, and you also show it to others, so that they can see how unique you are. Imagine how many people will turn to you, hoping that you'll do something useful for them. They will depend on you, and you, in turn, won't depend on money as much as you would if you stubbornly imposed your services on people who don't need them. That is, I want to say, and especially draw your attention to this, that only those people who are worthless depend on money. All these corruption scandals that we have been seeing on the news lately, in fact, only say that people are weak and stupid. They are not smart enough not to steal and live well, so they steal. They are rats, not people, mentally retarded people, sawing off the branch they are sitting on. But they have a different opinion of themselves and of theft in general. I have been convinced many times that the weaker a person is, the more difficult it is to explain to him that stealing is for fools. Read my article, which is called Big Money, and you will understand the principle by which you can earn it. After all, you can earn big money, earn it, not steal it. You don't have to steal anything. People will give you everything themselves, and will even be grateful to you for it, if only you find a way to their hearts. Of course, I do not deny that a good, well-fed life, when a person really has a lot of money, is in fact a life at the expense of other people. In order for someone to live well, someone must live poorly. The truth is beyond doubt, an unshakable truth. But there is no need to talk about theft in this case, because if people themselves give you everything and become dependent on you, this is not theft, this is people's unwillingness to take responsibility for themselves. A person who steals money while holding a military official's post is an idiot, because by doing so he exposes himself to danger, not only because of criminal prosecution, but also by weakening the defense of the country, of which this cretin himself is a part. But if a person gives power over himself to the state, for example, relying in old age not on himself, but on a pension, is this theft on the part of the state? Yes, this is irresponsibility of the people themselves. And who depends on whom in such a case? A thief depends on money, people depend on the state and therefore on the money that it pays them, and the state, in turn, depends of course on people, but to a lesser extent than they do on it, because the organization of state bodies is an order of magnitude higher than the organization of people. Be dependent on yourself. To say that a person should depend on himself does not make much sense, because in essence, we already depend only on ourselves, but not everyone understands this. Nevertheless, I think it is worth considering this issue more thoroughly, so that you at least understand that it is not money that changes your life, but you yourself, and it is not you who depend on it, but it is they who depend on you. A stupid person wants money, a smart person wants more intelligence, then the money itself will come to him, and being with money, but without brains, you will only wave goodbye to money when it leaves you as quickly as it came. But this is very difficult to explain to many people. I often communicated with those who asked me to teach them how to make money. I spent so many calories to instill in them the uselessness of money as such that it was tantamount to hard labor. There are many ways to earn money, including selling your ass, which many people actually do, both literally and figuratively. And this is a direct dependence on money, selling yourself for it. A person becomes an addict of money addiction, because they obviously need it, but getting it into the habit is not the best way to do it. I wrote about this very well in my article called Work for Money. I recommend you read it. I am sure that my reasoning will allow you to form your own, constructive thoughts, from the use of which you will get a lot of benefit. Each person must come to an understanding of what kind of life he lives. Doing something that you are told and getting money for it, well, think for yourself, what could be worse than that? Because when you are just a small cog in someone else's mechanism, which can always be replaced, then this is just a terrible feeling. For example, if we talk about hell, then it is hell, and not somewhere underground, but here on earth. Money, after all, plays the role of an intermediary between people. It is the same strings that puppeteers use to control their puppets. It is clear that when you are dependent on money, you do not depend on it, but on the person who pays you. The only question is what he pays you for and how. As I wrote above, if you are a specialist and are able to ideally solve the problems of many people, then these very people, will be happy to pay you. In this case, the people's path to you, so to speak, will not be overgrown. If you know how to organize other people, unite them with a common idea and find a use for other people, this will also make you a wealthy person, because you will be paid for the result, but achieved by someone else's hands and your head. In this case, you are entirely dependent on yourself, on your qualities, skills, abilities, on your character and intellect. But if you are a sheep, forgive me for being frank, and you are sitting on some government nonsense, parasitizing on other people, then you are very dependent. Not only do you have no idea what you are doing and why, they tell you and you do it, but you are also unable to control your income. It does not depend on you, but on the goodwill of your management, which can manage you as it pleases, and if something goes wrong, it will always replace you. This is how many people live, although they could live differently, by making others dependent on themselves, and not being dependent themselves. But first of all, of course, it is necessary to learn to control yourself, to depend on your mind, and not on someone else's will, and this is what my site will help you do first of all. The articles that I write here are not instructions, not a guide, not a scheme and not a system. This is thinking. This is a concept that you need to follow in order to become, if not a Superman, like the idea of this being of Friedrich Nietzsche, about whom he wrote in his book, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, then in any case a quite advanced person in life. Learn to manage your money. Speaking about dependence on money, of course, we cannot miss the topic of their competent management, Because the less of this literacy, the greater your dependence on money. I think everything is clear with responsibility and skills. This concerns money, but they are also needed when distributing it. You need to be able to redirect cash flows correctly. In my article, which is called How to Attract Money, I actually already touched on this topic, and what is written above, so you can read it and supplement the general picture of the world that I draw for you with additional knowledge. But still, there is always something unsaid or unsaid in a certain way. Think about this question: in which case are you more dependent on money, when you spend it quickly, or when you save it, thanks to saving? In my opinion, the answer here is obvious, although someone may think about the question that does not make sense to ask those who spend money senselessly. Once, one of my friends, being with me at the market where they sell old things, was extremely surprised that I bought myself a book on money. It was Napoleon Hill's book Think and Grow Rich. No, not a paper one, it was an audiobook on an old worn-out disc. At that time, I already had several very good books on money, and I was happy to listen to the audiobook I bought, which significantly expanded my understanding of money and ways to earn it. But when I bought it, many would have thought it was completely unnecessary nonsense, while there was so much beautiful junk around. My friend that day bought sneakers for himself in a brand store, for 3 times more than they cost at the same market. He did not understand me, I did not understand him, he did not understand why spend money, and it was not much money, on some book, and I did not understand why you need to be such a donkey and overpay for the same sneakers. You understand, dear readers, what I'm getting at. It's not so much about saving, I've already written about that, but about the value system that you have in your head. There are as many examples on this account as you like. It's important to understand not each of them separately, but the essence as a whole, what you get at the end when you spend money. Many people know and, as people themselves say, understand that you need to save money and put it aside, no matter how much you earn, but few do it. But what seems even more paradoxical is that while wanting one thing, for example, to be rich, people do the exact opposite, that is, they spend money on all sorts of nonsense and thus depend on it. After all, look at how many of these stupid toys there are, how many of them you can buy, working for them all day long, getting into debt, getting nervous, trying to cheat, just to buy another toy. Well, you don't need all this crap. No matter how shiny it is, and how attractive it is, why should you depend on money, on the people who pay you for it, and why should you depend on junk from the store? Managing your finances, first of all, is necessary with the awareness of what you need, because then you can save easier, and most importantly, do not stand on your knees in cases where the situation does not require it. Moreover, having the right concept from the point of view of what you need, you will spend money on what will give you more intelligence, which will allow you to earn even more money later. My friend bought sneakers, and now he works in a factory, noisy and dirty, for a modest salary. I bought a book on money, an audiobook, to be more precise, and now I live on income, and work mostly from home, which I actively strived for. The choice led each of us to different results. And is this example the only one of its kind, when people, making this or that choice, clearly show the connection between this choice and the result to which it leads? No, it is not the only one. There are plenty of such examples. Then what problems can people have with understanding what choice in their life can be correct? After all the examples are right before your eyes. Freedom and independence. I am quite young, at least at the time of writing this article, and when the Soviet Union collapsed, I still understood little in reality. We can now blame anyone for the collapse of a great country. It is always easier to shift responsibility to someone than to place it on ourselves. But let's be grown-up boys and girls, we must be, since we are interested in money. In the collapse of the USSR, as in the death of the Russian Empire, the people themselves are to blame. Without their support, without their participation, no coup is possible, Therefore the enemy always influences not so much the leadership as the people. Of course, the leadership can also be installed by means of a color revolution, but even in this case, the role of the people remains key, the responsibility of each citizen of the country for their actions. That is what popular opinion and the people's will are. The desire to have freedom, which is not even clearly understood, as well as some kind of independence, destroyed the USSR, and in the meantime made people even more dependent and limited. What kind of freedom do people need who ask for work, wages, benefits, pensions, and other alms, standing before the state with an outstretched hand? Why do these people need freedom? What do they mean by it, if they are ready to do anything for money? In the article called Money and Evil, I wrote about this, pointing out that it is not money, but people, with their desires and their blindness, who can turn money and anything else into pure evil. And even if this evil is relative, it often harms the person who gave birth to it. Our country has a huge history, very rich and eventful, in which there was everything. It is enough to learn from it alone, so as not to commit such senseless acts, which even to a person, as a supposedly rational creature, cannot be attributed. Now there are so many people dependent on money that it is not even a controlled flock of sheep, seeing a banknote in front of their nose and following it. It is an absolute unconsciousness, a collective unconscious, as Jung said. The fact is that many do not even understand how dependent they are on the idea of money, and they are dependent in such a way that money does not benefit them, but only harms them. You think I am exaggerating, but look at all the unfortunate people, look at the number of suicides and prisoners who have become victims of money addiction. When crazy drug addicts kill a young guy for 15 rubles, and the next morning the police tie them up, is that normal? And the reason is not in the money, the reason is in the lack of understanding of money, which supposedly leads to freedom. This is what our citizens wanted when they demanded changes, when they wanted democracy and freedom. It was the sweet illusory life that Western propagandists painted for them that really attracted them. And what does freedom have to do with it then? What does independence have to do with it? From whom do people want to be free and independent? From their own stupidity? No, friends, freedom is not given, independence is not voted for, just as money does not make a person's life happy. If you want happiness, freedom and independence, then become smarter, become more aware, take responsibility for everything, then you will be happy. And as long as you can be bought, you will not be free, no matter how much you want it. Dependence on money is worse than dependence on drugs. Because dependence on drugs quickly kills a person, but dependence on money makes a person live long and suffer.